Hi and welcome along to All Guns Blazing podcast. This is a special one today. We've got usual guest here, Mr. DT. How you doing?
I'm
Behaving
right.
yourself?
No.
What you done this week?
Turning up at FIFA Awards with my hat on.
Man.
It's all good.
Turned up at a black tie event, FIFA event, him and troops. We go to him, black tie, but the organiser said, yeah, I have to necessarily wear a black tie, but a suit, shirt and that. This guy rolls up, denim shirt on.
It was a shirt, wasn't it?
And a baseball hat.
Was it a shirt?
Troops baseball cap.
Answer my question. Was it a shirt? Did it have buttons on it?
A denim shirt to a black tie event.
Was it a shirt? It was a shirt.
The phrase, I can't bring him anywhere. And then I say to them, I'm saying to them, yeah, dad. I'm like, oh.
He is, he's like our dad.
They were on the verge of kicking us out, I'm sure of it. But no, it was a great event. It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really good.
I mean, some of the pictures you got, you got some unbelievable selfies, man.
Yeah.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah. So they weren't
Messi.
fazed by the hat and the denim shirt.
I think they were scared.
That's it. They were like, oh my God. They thought someone off the
They go like, hey, guys over there, he's the local gangster of the neighbourhood, man. We better give him a picture, you know what I mean?
Nah, but they were all right, man.
No, it was good, though. It was a really good event.
Yeah, it was lovely to be invited. It was one of them kind of moments that you're not going to get many chances like that in your life. So, and I'm quite lucky and I'm privileged to be in the position I'm in. And
so many superstars there. Zidane, Maradona.
DT.
I'm done now. Listen, we move on right to our very special guest that we've got here today on the podcast, who is FK. FK, good friend of mine. FK, you see him on Twitter. He's got a brilliant Twitter account in which he talks, and gives his own opinions on Arsenal, which sometimes he doesn't always agree with what Mr. DT has to say. But I love this guy. And FK, the reason why I've asked you to come along today is because I know that yesterday you were at the AGM, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Arsenal's AGM. It's sparked a lot of controversy. There's a lot of controversy around it. I have to admit, I've been to it in previous years, and I found it a most frustrating event. I could possibly have gone to the one yesterday, and it was sort of the choice between that or taking my kids out because it was half term. And I thought to myself, you know what? I know what's going to be coming at this thing. I'm taking my kids out for half term, right? But I wanted to get FK in because FK was there, right? And, I know everybody's read this and seen this, but FK was actually there. So I want FK to kind of explain to us what took part, what was said, the context of what things were said in, so that we're not commenting on this in the wrong way, so that we're doing it in a fair and right way. But certainly, FK, it seems like it was a very controversial AGM. I've been to a couple that have been controversial, but it sounds like this one topped all of them.
Yeah, it was quite hostile, particularly at the end because it ended abruptly. But I guess it might be useful just for people who aren't aware what an AGM is. It's annual general meeting. Any organisation that's a public limited company has to have one by law once every year or once every 15 months. It's an event where the board will meet shareholders, every shareholder ideally, but wherever shareholders can't attend, they will send proxies, and that's where I went in. I went as a representative to somebody else. 140, 150 odd people turned up with media as well. They had their own sort of section at the back of the room. People from the Telegraph and TalkSport and Goal and, distinguished writers that I'm sure you guys all interact with.
They didn't invite us, did they? Well, that's another matter.
They were there, and comically there weren't enough seats, and shareholders were kind of trickling in as Chips Keswick kind of took the stage to open the AGM. But it's essentially a formal event. It's a mandatory requirement. Arsenal Football Club have to do it, so it's very different to any supporter events or Christmas events.
Which is interesting because a lot of people look at that event. Like I saw a lot of comments yesterday where people were saying, well, at least they speak to the fans, at least they do this. But as you're saying, it's something that they have to do. It's like...
Yeah. And, the debate about Arsenal not engaging with fans, it's probably for another day, but actually we do a lot of end of season supporters events, question answers with Ivan Gazidis, things that they don't have to do, and the other clubs certainly don't do. But the AGM is something they have to do as a public limited company, and so all the shareholders are invited. Now, The day has an agenda. There is a set format to how these things work. You have a very formal bit at the start where you pass certain resolutions. That basically means you accept the accounts, you talk about the members of the board, the makeup of the board, and then you progress on to the rest of the meeting. The rest of the meeting is also split into two sections. You've got pre-submitted questions. That's a format that they've adopted over the last few years, and AGMs have been going on for a very long time. And that allows the board to predetermine the answers to that, to almost script the answers to that.
Basically questions that are vetted by them, not
They're not vetted. Every single question that is put in has to be documented and has to be addressed. That is the right of a shareholder. You ask a question and you're entitled, you're obliged to basically answer that, but they are pre-prepared. The answers are pre-prepared. So, you get a question and it could be something controversial, and there was something on Ivan Gazidis' salary, so presumably Chips Keswick will go away, prepare a few words and try and come back as a response to that. The second half of the AGM, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in greater length, is when you've got the open floor, so people can take the microphone or they queue up as they've done in recent AGMs, and they basically ask questions that the board won't be expecting. But of course, if you're worth your salary, you're going to be expecting all sorts of questions. So that's what happens. I know the presenters. I mean, you had the club secretary there, David Miles. You had Arsene Wenger, obviously the manager. You've got Josh Kroenke, who's one of the directors of the board, and you've got Stan Kroenke, the majority owner. Usmanov wasn't there, but he sent his officials or his proxy, and then of course you had all the other shareholders. Also very important to realise that the shareholders that were present, we actually only represent a very, very small percentage of the ownership of the club. Everybody will know that Stan Kroenke owns the vast majority, 67%.
Yeah.
Kroenke circa 30%, and the rest, you're talking sort of 2 to 3% of the rest of the club that's owned by individuals who maybe purchased shares years and years ago, and they've had it in their family's generation. So that's pretty much the makeup.
And that leads me on to the sort of first thing I want to speak about, what turned out to be a real farce at the start of this AGM, where people were asked to vote on Sir Chips Keswick and Josh Kroenke, because again it's a requirement, isn't it, that they're voted onto so explain what happened with that.
Yeah, so you've got these things called resolutions. That's the opening part of the meeting, where you pass, you accept things like the name of the auditor, which was passed, you accept the accounts, which was also passed, and then you have to vote in by election, re-election of members of the board. So by rotation, it's just a legal requirement. So Chips Keswick's post had come up for re-election, and basically it was put to the floor as per normal kind of tradition, and
show of hands.
Yeah, show of hands. So people are voting, and there was massive objection.
What percentage of the floor,
I would say,
objected to in the show of hands?
Surprisingly, there were 4 or 5 people who actually did vote in favour of Sir Chips, and unsurprisingly, there was the vast majority. I mean, I'm talking everyone in my row, everyone in front of me, everyone behind me, the vast majority of the room. And at that point, there were a few giggles, a few kind of bits of heckling, and David Miles, the club secretary, had to step in and say, look, if this is the way the vote's going to go, we then have to go to an official poll, because we want to represent the shareholders. We need to get the details of who all the proxy people are, and then do an official count, and then come back to you. Now, at that point, there were some of us in the crowd who kind of realised that Stan Kroenke owns most of the
and
club.
You get one vote per share, don't you?
That's the mandate, so it's one vote per share. Now, given that, I think that's what David Miles was trying to give away, but he had to obviously read it.
So with him having 67%,
he was always going to vote him in.
Yeah, so there's no way you can beat him.
To be honest with you, DT, it was more of those individual shareholders who wanted to make a point of it. And as much as we knew that it was farcical, and as much as we knew it was going to take time to do the votes and for the staff to go behind the little board and count them all up, it was about making a point. And I think the biggest thing that we take away from that resolution, and also Josh Kroenke, he was also exactly the same process. People objected against him. He had to fill in a different voting card. It was counted behind the board at the back of the room, and then it was announced that the resolution had carried because the majority had voted him in.
The majority being one man, really.
Well, you'd be surprised. Usmanov's agency,
yeah.
obviously, that they voted in Josh Kroenke as well, which is quite surprising, because we always think about Usmanov against Kroenke, but
I just think that he's not rocking the boat right now. I think that in Usmanov's position, he's looking at it and saying, right, Kroenke's got 67%. Even if I go against him, we're still not going to win. Josh is still going to get what he needs, and so Sir Chip. So what's the point of rocking the boat? I would love Usmanov to actually go to one of these AGMs, and then for him to sit there and pose the question, which I know was posed yesterday: why can I not have a place on the board?
Whether we see Usman off at a board meeting, an AGM meeting, I don't know about his in and outs and what his intentions are. The question was posed and it was quickly, kind of like thrown out of the room.
I just find that absolutely baffling. 30%. You own 30% of a football club and you're not allowed to be any part of that club. I can't think of that anywhere else. I genuinely can't. Normally 30% is what you need to trigger a takeover. But obviously with Stan being there and having what he has, it doesn't. But 30%, and the man's literally, no.
Well, legally, he's not entitled to be part of the board. Legally, he's not required to be invited to be part of the board. As the majority owner, Stan Kroenke, owning over 60%, 67% of the ownership of the club, he doesn't have to invite him in at all. Usmanov is more than welcome to join the AGM, but of course he sends his representatives, and there's lots of conspiracy theories as to why that might be, and maybe he's not allowed in and all that type of stuff. But there is no obligation. But just to clarify, and that's not me siding with Kroenke, that's just the way that it is. But going back to those resolutions, they were passed. Sir Chips was re-elected. Josh Kroenke retains his spot on the board, and that's what the farce was about. So,
but it's a farce because basically those ordinary fans that are in the room are representing the majority of the fans, we could say, right? That we know they don't want Sir Chips Keswick or Josh Kroenke to continue at the club. They don't think they're doing a good job.
Yeah, I mean, look, with Sir Chips, I have first-hand experience of the way that he's chaired meetings before, and I'm sure we'll talk about him and his style later on, and it's not a very good way of doing it. Very, personal and very offensive. With Josh Kroenke, I think it's a natural byproduct of being Stan Kroenke's son. I don't think he's done anything personally to really get people angry or to get Arsenal fans sort of against him, but I think it's a natural byproduct of the ownership of the club, and people are just a bit like, well, who's this young guy? Doesn't really know the club. They assume he doesn't know anything about football, and he's on the board just because his dad owns the place.
That's true, isn't it?
Well, it is.
It's like if you would, for example, I was sitting there thinking about it yesterday. If you walked up to them yesterday and you had a chance where you could ask them certain questions just off the cuff there and then about Arsenal's history, they wouldn't have a clue. They wouldn't. I reckon they probably wouldn't even know who we were before we were called Arsenal. They probably don't even know that we were originally from South London. This is what I'm saying. This is why
probably
so
don't
many
even know
people.
George Graham is.
But this is why so many people get their back up, because they sit there and they portray themselves as bigger supporters as us. The people that go week in, week out, or whether you're in India or Australia or wherever you are, and you dedicate all your life to this club. And these people have got the audacity to sit there and say, we know how you feel. We are just like you. Sorry, you ain't nothing like me.
I mean, one of the most interesting things, right, is that he. So let's get into Sir Chips, right? So he sort of starts off the meeting by saying that he feels the board is quite a diverse board. Now, hold on a minute. And I know this has come up before. I was at an AGM where this came up before about the lack of diversity on that board. It is not diverse, is it? I mean, there's no females on that board. There's nobody of colour on that board. There's not even anyone, I think you were saying it to me this morning, that there's not even anyone local who lives, say, in North London on that board. I mean,
I see an article written in the Times about exactly what you were saying. And I'm just going to read from this. And he says, he references the noble principles of Arsenal Football Club, but does not abide by them. He insults the intelligence of fans, claiming that Ivan Gazidis, the underperforming chief executive, was doing a fantastic and first-class job and was well worth his 2.6 million package. A female shareholder asked about the makeup of the board, given Keswick's contention that we have a diverse board. Modern organisation. Arsenal board is made up of Gazidis, Ken Fryer, Lord Harris of Peckham, Kroenke, and his 37-year-old son Josh, as well as Keswick. So that's all male, all white, average age of 65.
And when he said that, what happened?
There was outrage. I mean, people started booing. It was like being at a game and you're booing someone off the pitch, and it was comical. To just going back a couple of steps. So, as chairman, it's your role to host the AGM. You have very few things actually to do as chairman of Arsenal Football Club throughout the year. You know, keeping up appearances, formal stuff, sitting on committees, representing the club. But the AGM is probably one of your headline events, and his behaviour, despicable. I mean, if I was a shareholder, you know, I went as a proxy person, so representing someone. If I was a shareholder, I'd be offended by the way that he hosts those meetings, by the way that he almost dismisses people in the audience, the way he just brushes questions out of the room, the way that he just chairs it all. It's just completely sort of them and us, and it's like a barrier. So, you know, someone mentioned yesterday it was peasants and the board, and that's how it feels. Honestly,
yeah. I do feel like that.
It got to the point yesterday where it was comical, and you sat there kind of just laughing, thinking, well, what is the point? You know, there is no point in coming here. You want to ask questions that you're perfectly
half-term my kids.
Yeah. You're perfectly entitled to ask. You know, as a shareholder, you have that right to ask. And you know what? The least of all, as a shareholder, the one thing you would expect is to be treated with courtesy, with decency. You know, to be given that grace to be able to ask a question, you expect an answer. If it's not the answer you want, that's fine. But you expect that patience and that courtity.
So there was a female who asked the question.
So a lady had turned up at the end, and had lined up at the end, and she'd asked that. You know, she said, "I've been asking this question for 3 or 4 years now, and every year you always say we'll look into it, and this year I don't want that answer. And the question is, when are you going to do something about the makeup of the board? Because you look at the board, and exactly like DT's just summarised from the article, it is your white middle-aged man or average age of 65, no ex-players. It's baffling. You know, no local people, no perhaps ethnic minorities that maybe one for the future. Whatever it is, there is no fair representation of the community or the fan base that you serve.
There's no diversity.
There's no diversity. And at that point, he the first thing he said, we'll look into it. And of course, everybody laughed because she'd said, that's the one thing I don't want to hear.
Christ.
And everyone, people started sort of, answer the question, just like resign, chants from, and people were getting vexed, people were getting really angry, and it was again just brushed off, dismissed, and the lady just kind of turned her back and went back to her seat. And that was the example of the disrespect that he has for someone who she owns £80,000 worth of shares. That's the current market value. She said that it had been passed on through generations and generations in her family. Now, actually, the money doesn't matter whether you own 1 share or 100 shares or 300 shares. You deserve that respect, that courtesy, and she didn't get it.
Exactly.
And he's the chairman of the club.
Exactly, the chairman of the club. Someone referred it to begging for bread and water. That's what you felt like as a fan, trying to get bread and water out of them.
Please, sir.
And they were looking, please, sir, can I have some more, sir? And they're just looking down at you like, and it's not the first time Keswick's done this. Because
he does it every time.
Because we've even said before, a question was put to him in a previous AGM about our lack of progress in the Champions League and whatnot, and he actually went, that's noise. That question's just noise. I would have got up and probably ended up throttling it. It's like,
hence why you're not invited.
You know what
to
I mean?
the AGM.
But it's just like, at the end of the day, that kind of stuff would wind me up, because who the hell are you to think you can look down at people like that? These are people that have put their life into this club. People that have had, Arsenal passed down through generations, like me, from my dad to my granddad to my great granddad.
Kind of sums up
how
divide,
out of touch they are.
The divide between the owners and the board of the club and the fans. That is it. That he encapsulates it, doesn't he? I mean, and then you've got Stan Kroenke, who came along. He's flown in from America.
Well done.
Right? Everybody's always saying, we never hear from him. And we didn't hear from him again. I mean, what was Sir Chips, what did he have to say about that as well? Because I know that was a question that was asked.
It was indeed. So the Arsenal Supporters Trust, one of the supporters groups, before the meeting, they wrote to Stan Kroenke to say, look, you come into the AST, we urge you to speak, we urge you to tell us about your vision, etc., etc.
Which is, come on, that should be standard, isn't it? You're the owner of the club. We know that all this has been going on with Usmanov, and he doesn't want to, and Kroenke saying no. I want to keep this club, and I want it. We want to know what your vision is.
Exactly.
Simple. Come on, this is an AGM. Give us your vision going forward.
That's definitely. You know what? Because the best way of comparing it, you look at Chelsea's owner Abramovich. He never says a word, but you don't need him to say a word because he acts. You know what he's thinking without him saying anything. When a manager's not performing, you're out the door. When they're not winning trophies, they'll go and buy the players that they need to go and win the trophies. So he doesn't need to stand up and say anything because the fans know that if it's not going right, he's going to act. But with Stan Kroenke, things are not going right, and he doesn't act.
And what did Sir Chips have to say about it?
Well, Sir Chips basically said that Stan Kroenke didn't talk, by the way, and just clarify,
said nothing.
He didn't say anything. He
Anything
didn't
at all.
acknowledge anybody personally. He kind of sat there. He was very engrossed with papers that he was reading, presumably Ivan's words that he'd scripted. I don't know.
He said nothing. Not one word.
He's not. It's important to say he's not obliged to say anything. I know he's the owner of the club and he's a majority.
Come on,
I know.
What's going on? We want to hear from this guy.
Of course. But he is not obliged to say anything. And that's not me taking sides with him. I think, actually, if I was advising him, I'd be like, Stan, look, the fan base it's in disarray. You know, people are outraged. People are the club's in a bit of a mess. You know, you need to at least explain your vision.
Yeah.
And then at that point, Sir Chip said, "Well, look, you know, if you want to hear from him, if you want to understand what his vision is, I suggest you read the Telegraph," which was
just a joke, isn't it?
Outrageous.
And what was the reaction to that?
Oh, people were annoyed in the crowd. They're like, "Come on, how can you say that? You know, talk." And people started getting up and sort of like, you know, arms flailing at Kroenke, trying to get him.
And what was Kroenke doing at this stage when the arms were flailing?
Sat very calmly, just sort of not staring at individuals, looking into the room as if he was just, you know, looking over the people. No real reaction.
Peasants, be quiet.
You know what I mean? Off with their heads. Off with their heads.
I would say that was probably more Sir Chips' response. Sir Chips was kind of like, you know, stuttering, and you know, he looked a bit embarrassed about it. He faced like thunder. Didn't, you know, he wanted to kind of like calm the ranks. You know, everybody needs to like chill out, but people were angry, and you know, whether you like it or not, he is the ownership. You expect to hear some words from him at the AGM, even if it was just 2 lines. I'm the owner. I want this club to be successful.
Why did he bother come?
Ticking a box.
Simple as that. It'd be nice if he actually turned up to watch a game, though, wouldn't it? Apart from when we play at Wembley, and then he turns up with his nice little flowers in his pocket and stuff, and he thinks he's, oh, look at me with my complimentary scarf that we've just stuck on everyone's chair. That'll shut him up for the summer.
He said something last year for Arsene Wenger's 20 years. He gave him a little prize, and he's not the best talker. And if he's not the best talker and most confident person about the game, then at least maybe get Josh to say a few words or somebody else. Yeah. But he didn't say it. It went down like a lead balloon, and people were angry.
Because maybe Josh would get more respect if he actually spoke for his dad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because like FK was saying, that Josh is probably the byproduct of just who his dad is, sort of thing. And it's just, you know, if he maybe stepped forward and said, look, you know, I'm going to say a few words, then Arsenal fans might go, oh, do you know what? He's maybe not as bad as his dad.
It's a silent Stan, remain silent Stan. He didn't say a word.
He does indeed.
Didn't say a word, and Sir Chips telling people to go and read it in the Daily Telegraph.
Did you read the article? Did you?
You know, I went to read it, right, online, and it's actually, you've got to subscribe. I'm wondering, right, if he's got some shares in that as well.
You have to subscribe.
Yeah, you've got to pay to read
wow.
But basically the article's saying, isn't it? He's saying that, talking about his love for the club.
It talks about his love and his vision, but it doesn't explain what his vision is. So actually, it's just a lot of hot air. It's just a lot of
that's all it is.
Generic kind of terms. You know, I love this club. I invested in this club.
Rubbish. He said that he could have done any other business. This is a hard business to make money.
Right.
But I'm in this for the long haul, and in the clubs that I have, I was thinking, hold on, none of your clubs are successful.
Yeah.
I remember an American fan saying to me, he goes, do you know what his most successful club is, Robbie? And I said, what is it? He goes, Arsenal. I was like, is it? Oh, bloody hell. Right? You know, so, you know, it's just not good, is it? It's just not a good, you know, he comes, he doesn't say a word. He knows that the fans are against him. You know, I just do not understand.
The one thing that I got, and the one thing that a lot of people got from the AGM is, and recent activities and recent media statements that he's released, is that I do think he's going to be here for the long term. You know, he's obviously rejecting bids from Usmanov for his shares by bringing on Josh. I think DT said he was 37. He obviously sees him as a bit of a successor, and Josh seems really kind of like tuned in with that. And I think they're here for the longer term. So when your likes of Friars and your Chips Keswicks and your Wengers, and once they all kind of go, we are literally left with the Kroenkes and Gazidis, and we'll talk about Gazidis later. But
no, let's talk about Gazidis now.
Okay.
Right, Gazidis has been given a massive pay rise of nearly £1 million, and again, questions asked: how do you justify this guy getting, this massive pay rise? Quite legitimate question for shareholders to ask, which would be asked at any shareholding meeting. Why has he been given? What has he done? Now, what was the response to that?
Well, when the question was posed, so the questions were put up on screens for everybody who couldn't see them. When they came up, there's a bit of chuckling going on. There's a bit of controversial type thing. Everybody wants to ask it, but only very few people.
Well, fans ask it nearly every week. What do you do?
I'm
going to see this.
Well, there's a point on that. The chief executive of a football club obviously has a very defined role, and there's only so much that he controls on the pitch. So actually, when Arsenal come fifth and they only win an FA Cup, for their fans to kind of say, well, because how do you justify his salary and his bonus? That's true, but to an extent. As chief exec, he's got to deal with obviously the football club. He represents us on committees and boards. He does all the off the field stuff. So the academy, development, Hale End, London Colney, Arsenal in the community, the work that we do with our the innovation lab, the sensory room, I think at the stadium, Gay Gooners, all that type of stuff that we do. It's brilliant stuff, and that's stuff that it's important stuff. It's stuff that has to be done, and he is in charge for delivering all of those projects. Now, as a chief exec or as any individual employee of an organisation, you're going to have a set of objectives at the start of the year, and he's quite frankly hitting those objectives. The commercial revenue that he has to generate, it was a slight increase. I think it was £9 million this year compared to commercial income last year. But over the last 5-6 years, we've doubled our commercial activity, and we've also increased the number of partnerships that we've got. So, if you're looking at it from a box ticking exercise, Rob, he's actually hitting all of his objectives as a chief exec now. So Chips Keswick.
But hold on.
Yeah, go on.
One of those though is also he's above Wenger.
Yeah.
So he's got the ability to. Well, I say he has the ability to remove the manager if he doesn't believe he's performing.
Yep.
So he does kind of have a lot of influence on that, doesn't he? He has a lot of influence on transfers.
He has zero influence.
No, well, he's supposed to, isn't he? And he's supposed to have a lot of influence on transfers, for instance. Yeah. Our transfer policy at the moment is an absolute mess.
Shambles.
Right, shambles. We've got two of our best players, right, with contracts running out. Wilshire's contract's running out. It's a mess at the moment. It's an absolute mess. And yes, whilst you can say, financial targets are being hit, because if you can look on it and say financially, we're making money from this and we're making money off the sale of players. But on the pitch, it's not being reflected. And that is what, a football club, the main thing is the performance on the pitch. And he does have whilst he's not the manager of the club, we know, but his job, if being done properly, should have some sort of effect on that as well.
I agree with you. I mean, like I said, it is by definition, the chief exec would have the responsibility of hiring and firing and promoting other staff. The reality is, like DT's basically alluded to, is that actually Ivan Gazidis doesn't have that much say so. There were rumours about board disruption during the summer. We think that Ivan Gazidis was one of those who would have been very happy to have replaced Wenger, but of course Dan Kroenke took that decision and kept him in charge. So, but you have
never explained it at the meeting.
I never explained it, but you have to look at. I mean, if we're looking at chief exec in isolation, and you're being fair to the role and responsibilities that he has as an individual, the off the pitch stuff, even though that's the only thing that's important to us as match going fans, it's all the off the pitch stuff that is really important as well. And so from an employee point of view, he's actually doing a good job.
What do you reckon?
Well,
good job.
I'm going to read you something, right? Now this comes from a shareholder, and you might know him. He's quite well known on Twitter. His name's Darren Arsenal. He was going to ask a question which was not allowed yesterday because of everything that went on. So I'm just going to read out briefly what he was saying and what his question is, and this will give you an insight into a few little things. And this is why I got so frustrated with you the other week when we had our debate over this, yeah? So don't start me off again, right? And he said, but this is a question that was going to go to Ivan Gazidis.
Right.
And he said, despite the spin you have used today to discuss our commercial income, it is comparably poor with our competitors. For example, in the last couple of seasons, Arsenal had agreements with Europcar, Citroën, for an example. The deals with Europcar and Citroën expired to be replaced by, nothing. No car partner, no watch partner, no tech partner. The other two haven't been replaced, which in analogy of some of our players not renewing and not being replaced. Arsenal don't have a hire car sponsor or a general car sponsor. Arsenal have 24 sponsors in total, while Manchester United have 65. The 10% growth to 117 million is in fact only level with what Chelsea and Liverpool announced in 2016 for their previous year, and who are expected to announce huge growth when their results are announced. Nobody expects to reach Man United's levels. Given that the CEO received a rubber stamp bonus again, I wonder what it was for. Not for commercial improvement as evident, not for the once again shambolic ability to buy, sell players for the club given. Given that some of the players from last summer were seemingly available to leave this summer, not for allowing the manager to decide what to do and what he wanted to do and when he wanted to do it, as evidenced by the fact that winning a 7-game competition allowed him to decide that he would sign a new deal. I would contend that the only catalyst for change that has gone ahead this summer, despite the huge increase in TV revenues, is the decision to re-gouge supporters with a 3% season ticket rise.
You can't argue with none of that.
Really difficult reading that as well. It's in such small writing, and I'm like, it's like, and huge words. Normally I'm saying Wenger out, and it's like, that's so easy, but there's like big words there, and I'm like,
that's
whoa.
a brilliant question, and you can see why they didn't want to answer that question, because, you know, that is true. When you compare it, now I think they went on to, they said comparable, he's comparable with other clubs. It ain't, is it?
No.
It's not.
But I think what you have to realise is that if next year we go and do this like new shirt sponsor deal and new other deals that we're talking about, because the other existing deals kind of come to their end. If we do, our commercial income is going to go. It's going
but he's getting the money now,
and then all of a sudden,
even with £1 million now,
he is. But the bonus is something that you have to argue, because we just don't know why he's got that bonus.
And that's what everyone tried doing, but they wouldn't answer.
Salary is just on
no, but
chief
and they're saying that, listen, if I think kind of in their statement they're kind of saying that if we don't pay this sort of money, somebody of his quality will go.
Yeah,
is what they're trying to say. But listen, the fans want to know as well about, you know, what is he doing to help the performance on the pitch.
They're not doing nothing, because what was really key in that as well, and I enjoyed celebrating the FA Cup win, all right, but we know we should be a higher level than that. And the fact was that 7-game tournament basically saved Arsene Wenger's job. Not the 38 league games, not the shambolic Champions League displays. 7 games, of which 2 were against non-league clubs. Remember
hold
that?
on. No, let me just say, right, they also said, and Stan Kroenke said this quite clearly, that had nothing to do with the FA Cup. Even if we hadn't won the FA Cup, he would have kept Arsene Wenger on, and I truly believe he would have done. I think they, you know.
No, that's fine. He would have, because Arsene makes him money. Okay, I believe that if we'd never won the FA Cup, Wenger would have walked. That's the difference.
Possibly.
Kroenke wouldn't have got rid of him because he's his money machine. He's making him the money. But Arsene Wenger, I think the pressure got so much last year that there were points where he was ready to go. You think West Brom away. Remember his comments after, when he come out straight away and said, I know my decision. I genuinely think at that point he had decided to go. And I reckon his mind was changed. At that point, he was gone. We got the 2 non-league teams in the FA Cup right in that period where we were a complete mess. Let's say, for argument's sake, we would have got a Man City or a Chelsea at that time. I've no doubt we would have been out of the cup. We'd have got smashed. So I'm adamant that Arsene Wenger had made his mind up. He was gone last year. Gone. And then the board trying to convince him, carrying on in the cup, and is where all the confusion come in, and why nothing was said, and then there was all the problems with the fans, and fans.
Did they have anything to say about that, FK? Did they have anything to say about that period where, you know, it went on for months, where nobody knew what was happening at the club? And I know that was one of the questions that the A.F.C, like you said, wanted to ask was, you know, what are the plans for the future, succession-wise and things like that. And I think Wenger, because Wenger also spoke as well at the AGM. I mean, what? Okay,
so two questions there. We'll talk about Wenger's speech in just a second, but the the question that was asked about why his contract situation went on and on and on and dragged, and obviously Wenger came out and he admitted that it might have had an impact on the team. Gazidis has said that it's a very complex and very tricky kind of situation. You're trying to do things right to suit various parties, and basically Sir Chip said that after long and hard consideration, they realised that the experience that Arsene Wenger has got, the fact that we had won 3 FA Cups in 4 years, which they consider as a bit of an achievement, they feel that he's the right man at this time to lead us to further trophies. And they basically just ended it at that, and they said, we want to win more trophies. We feel that Wenger's the right guy to deliver us that, and that's why we gave him a 2-year
Why do they
contract.
feel that Wenger's the right guy?
Well,
was there a reason, apart from the 3 trophies? But
he touched on the fact that Wenger has the experience and he has the know-how, and that's pretty much all that was said at that time.
The experience to make money.
That, there is obviously, for Stan Kroenke, Wenger is a very safe bet. Like DT says, he keeps Arsenal at a certain level of competition that's going to bring in a certain level of revenue. But then
also,
the more successful you are, the more money you make. So actually,
yeah, especially in this day and age.
Do you know what? Right, a lot of people say target the money factor when it comes to Arsene Wenger, but I don't think it's that. I think when you see this AGM and some of the stuff that we've spoken about so far, I think he's almost like a human shield. Right, you've got guys there like Sir Chips Keswick and Stan Kroenke who says nothing. Right now, if the fans if they had to be dealing with the fans on a regular basis, I mean, all hell would let loose.
I know that
Arsene Wenger stands in the middle, and he takes all the flack. If we're being honest about this, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, no.
So
last
year, when the results weren't going well, right, he stood there. He didn't at no time turn around and say, well, they haven't given me enough. Like you'll see some managers. They even come out and they'll make some little subliminal comments where they say, yeah, well, I'm not getting the money to do this. If I had... Mourinho does it on a regular basis, right?
Wenger's on a very good wage.
Wenger will come and he will stand and he's like a human shield, and he will take everything that's coming at him from all angles, and he doesn't make none of it get to them. And if I was Stan Kroenke, that's why I'd be like, well, he's perfect, man. Whilst I don't want to hear like they said, the noise, I don't want to be hearing this noise. Arsene, most of the noise, by the time that noise hits him and he's deflected, only a little bit of it seeps through to us. Keswick, we only see him at these AGMs.
Yeah, no,
he never has any presence. So he's the chairman of the club. People know that.
He made a comment a little while ago saying that he's more interested in horse racing than football. Says it all, doesn't it? That's the chairman of our club. And yeah, I understand fully that Arsene Wenger has taken...
He's a shield.
...so much. I know that. But at the end of the day, my thoughts will never change about...
But could it possibly be worse? The guys that are running this club, from what we can see from that AGM yesterday, right? If Wenger wasn't there, could it possibly be even worse?
Who knows?
People say, and I know that where you stand on it, right? But people say Wenger out and this and that. Listen, we don't know whether it be better or whether it be worse, but there is a possibility,
of course,
with the guys that are running this club, that it could be possibly worse. I don't know how you feel on it.
It could be. No, it could be, because you look at, say for Chelsea, for example, they sacked Jose Mourinho just after winning the league. That could have been a gamble. But they went on.
But they know that the guy. But then the people in charge.
But that's what I'm saying. But a year later, but even so, even with the right man in charge, bringing in Conte, for example, who was following on from Chelsea's most successful manager. Let's remember that there was big shoes to fill there. But what I'm saying is he still could have failed.
But what I'm saying, it's a big move, though. He's got rid of Mourinho, right? But he's made a big move. If you remember, Conte at the time was managing Italy, and they managed to prize him away from Italy. He had a big rep to come and manage Chelsea, right? So they will make big moves. Are you confident that, say Wenger went, that these guys are in charge now, that run the club, would make the big moves to bring in the right person to replace him?
Do you know what?
Or do you think they just say,
I've said
let's get Eddie Howe in or somebody like that?
I've said all along that they...
No, I'm saying... No, I'm just saying,
I know what you're saying.
Let's get Eddie Howe in, because Eddie Howe won't rock the boat.
Yes.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. That Arsenal will bring a yes man in, which is why we would never have a Diego Simeone, because the moment they say something to piss off, He'll just go in there and kick the shit out of Stan Kroenke. So maybe we should employ him, because I'd love to see that. But the fact is...
But ain't going to happen.
But it ain't going to happen. I know that. But what I'm saying is...
So I'm asking the question, could it be worse?
But yes, it could be, but you never know. But the fact is, I feel that we've stagnated so much on the pitch, and it's got to a point where the same things are happening over and over and over again, season after season after season. It's not... When we lost to Liverpool 4-0, for example, when I said to you, I said, that's not just one of them results where you've got to hold your hand up and say, wow, do you know what? Liverpool are amazing today. But how many times has that happened to us? It doesn't, you know?
But if a guy comes in...
every year, Robbie.
If a guy comes in and ain't got the budget and the backing, the proper backing of the board...
He would have the same money that Wenger has, right? And I'm still adamant that Wenger doesn't spend enough of what he has. I still feel there's a lot more to spend, which he won't, because we all know Arsenal's in full control of transfers. He sits there. We all know that. Of course we do.
I don't know no more.
You only have to look at what was going out last year. Ivan Gazidis wanted a director of football. Arsenal got the overall say on that, and it never happened. But listen, what I'm saying to you is about performances. Yeah, sometimes a bit of man management from the manager and stuff like that. I just feel that it's got to a point where Arsenal's been in the job so long that a lot of them players look at him in the dressing room and it's the same voice. It's the same... A lot
of those things you're right on, yeah? But I'm just trying to make the point that when I look at these guys that are running the club... I
fully agree with what you're saying,
right?
Robbie.
A new guy who comes in, who doesn't have the respect maybe of Wenger, it could be a lot worse.
I know.
These are not football guys, are they?
I don't think there's a single Arsenal fan that doesn't think, will they, you know... We don't believe that Wenger's going to go and they're all of a sudden going to go, right, who's the best manager out there right now? Go get him. Let's go and get a Pep Guardiola, because Pep's going to turn around and go, give me 200 million because I want this, this and this. They're going to go... I look at it and I sit there and I say, who would they genuinely bring in? I look at it and I still think that they're... What's the right word? You know, like grooming, so to speak, per Mertesacker within the club at the moment.
Because they also pointed out and said that, you know, basically they were kind of making the point that we're kind of punching above our weight, aren't we? They were saying that, you know, with when you look at the what we spend and this and that, the metrics. Yeah. The objective metrics. I mean, I'm glad I weren't there as well, to be honest. When I think about some of the things they say,
shove it, them metrics.
We're punching above our weight.
So essentially, it's quite a nice build on from that discussion. So I mean, obviously we have got further to fall than we have got higher to climb, and obviously it could get worse, but it could get better. When it came to talking about objectives, that was an answer that was given into response to a series of 6 questions that were asked about transfer budget, contract negotiations and direction of the club. And at that point, I don't know why he said it, because it shows that Gazidis is a little bit out of touch with how the fans, you know, are feeling. And he kind of came out and said that of all the big clubs, Arsenal are the only club that have that have consistently performed at overachieving our objectives on a metrics basis. So if you're looking at, for example, spend. So Chelsea.
I see, he's boiling on it. Calm down.
He's boiling, yeah. It's coming out of DT's ears.
Like, but overperforming.
Let me just explain what I think Gazidis meant. So if we look back at the year before last, when we finished second. So you've got United, Chelsea and City who all finished below us. They spent a lot more than us. I think that's what he meant. But then you've obviously got the example of Leicester who massively overachieved. So it's almost like, well, you've told us about the big clubs, and that's why he put in big clubs, of all the big clubs who are overachieving. And he's using the fact that United had a post-Sir Alex Ferguson crumble. You know, they finished 7th and 6th and whatever it is. So it was a really silly thing to say, actually. I think he should have just avoided it, but he said it. And that's the headline.
Because he believes it. He said it because he believes it. Yeah. That's what he believes. So they obviously, and that would be something that the rest of them believe. That's probably what he got a pay rise, and they believe they're doing well.
Yeah. No, that's the thing.
In comparison,
they genuinely believe in their own. For such supposed intelligent men, they are thick as shit, because they are not. Do they not understand what they're doing to this club? And it's going to get worse before it gets better in terms of the fan base. I'm there, you know, FK's there most weeks. You're there every week. I'm there. No, I don't know whether you go
FK's
to
there
away
every
games.
week, man.
No, I don't know whether you go to away games. Do you know what I mean? I always see him at home games. That's what I mean. I know he's there at home games, but I'm not sure on the away games. But we're there every week, and away games in particular are where it's really venomous. Really, you know, Emirates is like Arsenal's fortress. You know, it's like Kim Jong-un's palace. I've said this to you. But away from home, this is where we get to come out and voice our disapproval, and it's where the hardcore fans are, the ones that don't take the shit. And you've seen one bad result, bang. You know, from within the space of 15 minutes where we thought we were beating Watford, we're singing Wenger out. And it was poisonous. And you felt like it could kick off at any moment and there was going to be fights and all sorts.
Well, that's interesting, DT, because we were talking about Wenger's speech, and he obviously came out and said a few words after Gazidis. So Gazidis normally gives a PowerPoint presentation, but he went for a video this year that had all these like record this, record commercial, record this, record that, and it was all quite punchy and showed loads of goals and obviously the FA Cup win. And
I noticed they stuck the trophies at the very front as well.
Yeah, they had
normally, back in the day, right? There's a photo from back in the day when we'd won the league and stuff like that. They put them behind them, like as if to say, yes, it's trophy, but that's normal for us. That's fine. Just leave them there. But it's like they're putting them at the front to say, "Oh, please look at this shiny thing, and when we finish today, you can get your photo with them."
Them. Oh yeah, the charity shield as well.
Community shield. So they kind of put them at the forefront to say, "Remember, look at these shiny things, and at the very end, you can stand over there in front of that backdrop and have a nice photo with it." Fools.
So going back to DT's point about the reaction that you get after a defeat, Arsene Wenger gave a speech which was, we've heard the vast majority of it before. You know, I'm here to please the fans through the style of play. I'm committed to the club. My hunger and commitment and desire is stronger than ever before. You know, we will look at my situation on a yearly basis. That was quite interesting because he's got a 2-year contract, so I don't know what to make of that. But he did talk about how the culture nowadays in football is to focus on the present, and he said that the weight of the present is heavy. He said people forget about the past. You know, people forget about everything that Arsenal have been through and achieved and whatnot. People forget about the future. They're not interested in the future. And what that's created is that every time you have a good game, there's hype, there's excitement, there's emotion, and every time you have a defeat, it's the end of the world, and all of a sudden Arsenal aren't good enough. And he just, you know, you reiterated the point that doesn't help. It doesn't help, and he can't please everybody. Today's AGM was an example, and he referenced the negativity in the room, or the awkwardness in the room rather. And he basically said that, you know, we just need everybody to be united. We need everybody to be supporting the club. And I can understand where he's coming from, but you can't mask over. I mean, defeat like the Watford game, we shouldn't have lost that. The Stoke game, we shouldn't have lost that. The Liverpool game, inexcusable. I mean, it was awful. It's humiliating. But I'm sure he's just as embarrassed as us. He's the face of the media.
His speech went down really well. Apparently, he
did,
got a mass. He's the only one to have got any applause
well, this
on the
goes
day.
Back to your point, Robbie, about when you're left with just, you know, when the Chips goes and Fryer goes, and you've just got the Kroenkes and, you know, looking after the club. This goes back to, well, actually, Wenger's probably taking bullets, and he's probably one of the good guys, one of the very few good guys. And I know we have reasons for wanting to move him on, but he is deep down. He comes across as a very sincere and a very honest guy, and you can tell he cares.
He does love the club, doesn't he?
He spent a third of his life
not like
at
me.
the club. Well, that's a different argument.
But he loves the club.
But he does love the club.
Would you say he loves the club?
If he loved the club, he would have left by now. If he loves the club, if he would have loved the club, then he would have realised that he cannot take us any further, and he should have walked away. If he's agreeing with what they're doing, because if he didn't, he would have walked away. He sees what they're doing. You know, even after the AGM yesterday.
Maybe he loves it and says to himself, "Well, if I walk
maybe he
away,
loves the £10 million a year. Maybe he loves that, but after
that helps.
But after the AGM, even
Mm.
after the AGM yesterday, right? He went straight into a press conference for the Swansea game, right? Knew that questions were going to be asked about the AGM, right? And he should have just kept totally quiet about the AGM, not mention it at all or anything like that, because if he didn't agree with what was being said on certain aspects, just stay quiet about it. You're here for the Arsenal-Swansea preview. Let's talk about it. No one's going to moan at you for that, because that's what you're here for. Arsenal-Swansea. We know the journalists are trying to dig away and whatever, but as fans, we're watching it. We're saying, yeah, no, that's fine. The one comment that was made in the AGM was the Chips Keswick one about, go and, read the paper and everything else and whatnot. Now, I haven't seen a single person, including media, fans or anything, that have not turned around and said that the way that Chips Keswick spoke to fans was disgusting. Everyone is in full agreement that it was disgusting. This question was asked to Arsene Wenger in the press conference. If he genuinely believed that that was out of order for the way he spoke to us fans, then he would have just said, I'm not talking about it. I'm here for the press conference. I'm here for that. So he wouldn't have to admit that what was said was wrong. He's here for a reason, which is the press conference for Swansea. Talk about that. No, he answered the question by sticking up for Chips Keswick. So agreeing with it. He was going along with it. He was saying that he didn't think he was being offensive and it wasn't meant like that. He was standing up for him.
Mate, he works for him. He's probably.
I don't care, Robbie. I row with you all the time, yeah. And half the time it's because you chat shit. And at the end of the day,
you stick up for me, don't you?
Yeah, I still stick up for you. But if you're in the wrong, I won't stick up for you. But if you say something wrong, then I won't stick up for you. Because I'm honest enough to turn around.
My mate.
You're my boy, man. But listen, at the end of the day, if you say something like
so you ain't got my back then.
Yeah, I've got your back, man. But
you ain't. It doesn't sound like it the way you talk.
Well, apparently I ain't got your back because I disappeared at White Hart Lane. Yet everyone didn't realise that just off the camera was actually me trying to protect my son. Yeah, when that gas canister got set off and everything, and I was there. And me and you both got put in the meat wagon together.
Oh, that's what I thought at the time. But after hearing this little revelation,
shut your mouth. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, if I've said things to you off camera and stuff, and we've had discussions about many of things, and if you don't agree with me, you've sat there and you've said to me about it, and even on camera, you haven't sat there and gone to me on camera or something. If I'm in the middle of an interview with you or whatever. You haven't sat there and gone, I don't really agree with what he's saying now, but I don't want to challenge him or something because he's my mate. You'll sit there and you'll challenge me because you don't agree with what I'm saying. So mate or not, you're challenging what I'm saying because you don't agree with it. So if Arsene doesn't agree with it, then you can easily brush over that because that was not a press conference about the AGM. That was a press conference about Arsenal Swansea. So he could have easily brushed over that by saying, not answering any questions about the AGM. That's finished with. This is about Swansea. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about who's available, etc., etc.
You know what I think it is? I think what DT's suggesting about Wenger avoiding the question, that probably would have been the sensible thing to do. So at the time, he could have just said, look, we're here to talk about the game. AGM's done and dusted. You'll read about that, I'm sure. But I think what Wenger's done, I think he deep down he's realised, because he acknowledged it in his speech immediately. He said, you know, I want to please everybody, and clearly today's an example of it not. I think he's realised that Sir Chips has made a big mistake, and I think he was trying to not cover for him, but he was trying to almost repair it. He's trying to say, well, look, we're Arsenal Football Club. He knows that there was a mistake, and actually he shouldn't have gone down that road. I also think that, going back to what we were talking about earlier about Wenger leaving and what's going to happen afterwards, I think there's a chance, or that it's plausible to suggest that he knows that the future of the club and the future of the board is not great, which could be a reason why he's sticking around. He wants to see what the future of the club holds in terms of ownership, the direction that they're going to go. You might disagree with it. I can see your blood boiling, but there's a chance that could be. Because the thing is, people say to me all the time. I read tweets this morning. Wenger, he earns this much amount of money. Of course, he wants to stay, but he's a very wealthy man. He's immensely wealthy. He's got a big, asset portfolio. He's into investments. He's earned a lot of money from Arsenal Football Club. At 68, 69, 70 years of age, with the stress that he has to deal with, he doesn't need it. 10 million to him is nothing.
Do you know what I think it is? It's power.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's what a lot of it is. And
I agree with that.
And I don't mean to lower the tone in this when I say this, right? Because I don't want to understand what I'm just referring to something here, right? But what was really key for me was that I was seeing an interview from his former wife, Annie, right? And she said that one of the problems with their relationship and why it broke down was not the cheating, which we all know about and everything. It was the fact that he changed as a man, that he became different. He became this, aggressive man, powerful, like it's got to him. Like he's up here because he's so in control of Arsenal Football Club. Yeah, I still think that he's right up there in comparison to Stan Kroenke in terms of owning Arsenal. He's got that much weight behind it. Yeah, that I think it's all just got to him. Now, this is a woman that will know him better than anyone. This is his wife, Now, like I said, I'm not trying to be nasty about what I'm saying. I'm saying simple facts that's in the public domain. Now, this is a woman that knows him better than anyone else. And she said, as a man, he changed. He got too much power. And I feel that that's what it is. And I also feel that he's been at Arsenal so long, he can't let go. Because when he's let go, he has nothing left in his life. You can have all that money in the world. But Arsene's life, he sat there and said many times that his life is football.
If you could get rid of one person.
What out of Kroenke and...
Kroenke or Wenger?
Stan Kroenke. Stan Kroenke. All day long, because I know that another man would come in. Let's say, for example, if Usmanov come in, I know that out of respect, he would probably say, we'll give Arsene another year. All right? But you're having this much money. Don't sit there and say what a player's worth or anything else. Give me your shopping list. Right? Don't say they're only worth 30 million, because if the club want 50, I'm paying 50. That's not down to you. Give me a shopping list. I'll go get the players. You've then got to go and mould that team and go win the biggest trophies.
Do you think at the moment that maybe when we think it's Wenger who's being tight on buying players, that after when you hear these things coming from the board about the metrics, objective metrics, and how we're meeting that and how we're doing better, do you think that there's a possibility that maybe it's them who are saying to him, well, hold on, I am Arsene. Well, this guy's worth no, we've checked out with our guys who deal with all the stats right? He's worth no more than 30 million. They want 40. We're not going any higher than that. And then Wenger, as we've seen in this whole AGM, and as you said, went to the conference afterwards, even though he knows that Keswick has messed up, still takes all the flack on their behalf. Do you think that maybe a lot of the times that maybe when Wenger's getting the blame for these things, maybe it's because that is how it is behind him? No. They're saying there's no more than that. You don't.
No, because Wenger done an interview last season about Ivan Gazidis, and he said he's had to put Ivan on a leash, in other words, because Ivan comes to him in the summer and whatnot, and when they're planning everything for transfers and whatnot, and Ivan comes to him with these, massive ideas.
He gave a speech saying that. He gave a speech saying that, but going off of what you've seen yesterday, where he obviously knows that every single person in that room, every journalist, every fan, probably the board members as well, know that Keswick has been disrespectful to the fans of that, including Wenger, why he then had to try and make his speech afterwards to kind of repair a lot of the damage. But yet still then goes into another room, like you said, and then he's faced with questions on it and defends him. So does that not show you that perhaps this is a guy that he takes a lot of flack on behalf of this board? Maybe they don't give him the money.
I've said he does take flack.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe they don't give him the money. He might say certain things.
I believe that he does get money.
I mean, what do you think about that, FK?
Well, Ivan Gazidis said something yesterday that I don't think a lot of people picked up on, but he said when Arsenal look to buy players, Arsene Wenger is given the support of the executive staff, the scouts, the analyst team, coaches, and financial experts. Don't know what the financial experts bit was, but I'll give you an anecdote, and this is something that I sometimes I hear things, and people know about it, and I have no problem with sharing this. But Wenger wanted to sign Griezmann a couple of years ago, and it was so much interest. The Greek player wanted to come. Arsenal were very happy to offer the money. Arsene Wenger was very happy to offer the money, and then the deal fell through because I hear that the board said no. And in the end, we made a panic decision. We tried to find other players. We couldn't find anyone. We ended up getting Lucas Perez as an emergency purchase. And I believe that there's a little bit of truth to that story, actually, Rob, about the board being quite controlling. And as much as Gazidis wants to go out and do this, that and the other, Arsene Wenger has in his mind who he wants to buy, and I don't think he's always been supported. So that's my feeling. Yeah. I wouldn't say that. I'm sure there's been players that Wenger's been, that he's dithered. He's had at Colney and thought, what, don't like the look of him.
Who do you think was to blame for the Suarez?
Well, with the Suarez thing, there was obviously a clause in his contract that's been well documented. Even Liverpool have come out and said, of course there was a clause.
Who do you think made the final decision to go in with £1?
I don't know, man. I think it was a collective decision. The thing is, right? Okay, well, let's put it in simple terms. We've all played football games. We've all played Football Manager, I'm sure, at some stage. When you've got a release clause, you have to match it or you have to exceed it, right? So technically, if the clause exists and says, right, if you are to bid more than £40 million, you are technically entitled and allowed to purchase this player. And Arsenal, with that £40 million and £1 bid, had we have forgot about Liverpool's rejection, we could have taken him to court. It was World Cup year, could have taken 6 months, 9 months to eventually release the player from the club and then get him. And that was in nobody's interest. So at that point, we've kind of backtracked, and we were too embarrassed at that point to say, let's go with 45 million or 50 million pounds. The biggest mistake was coming out and actually publicising it. The biggest mistake was admitting it in a press conference.
Liverpool publicised it.
Yeah, but then when it was asked, I think Arsene Wenger said, yes, we did make the bid, and it was, well, what's the point of admitting that? Just say, look, that's all confidential, blah blah blah, keep it in house. But the clause was there, and to exercise the clause, you've got to trigger their terms and it's like buying a house. Someone says to you, my asking price is £600,000. You're not going to bid 700,000 just to be nice. You're going to bid £600,000 or whatever it is that the person wants. So if the clause is in the contract to say, look, you need to bid more than £40 million to get him, player's yours, well, that's what Arsenal did. It sounds silly. It sounds really petty, but all they did was meet the clause that they had set.
I just find the whole thing just absolutely farcical, that, because it's, unlike buying a house, if I went to buy a house, it's not going to be in the paper next week. Well, maybe it would be now, because maybe everyone would be going, look at the house he's just brought. Oh, I'm not having that. Look at that. Look what ArsenalFanTV's done for him. Robbie's bought him a house. Blah blah blah. But no, it's like he's getting his missus a new bathroom now. But you look at that, and I would love to know. I've always said this, that I believe that they're all as culpable as each other. They've all done something wrong. If I had my way, I'd change everyone. The board, the manager, backroom staff, everything. From top to bottom, it needs a complete and utter refresh. But if I had to make the choice out of the two, then I would go for Stan Kroenke to go. Bye-bye, see you later. Take your toupee and get out the door. Simple as that. But I look at, and like we said, I just... The worst feeling is not knowing what's going on as fans, And then one of the comments that Keswick said, briefly, he said that, anyone's got a problem in that, write a letter in.
Yeah.
Write a letter in and stuff like that. And I was chatting to my dad last night. My dad's been going since the 40s. All right? When he had problems back in the day, that's what they used to do. Before there was all the social media and that, they used to write a letter to the club. He would always get a handwritten response back. Because the owner of the club, the chairman of the club at the time, they cared. They cared about what the fans thought. My dad had taken the time to write a letter to the club to express, he weren't happy about something that was going on, whether it be Terry Neal or what was going on at that time. The club looked at that and said, no, we must address that properly. You can't have a disgruntled, long-serving fan unhappy. Handwritten letter back, blah, blah. Now, you see it all the time, people put online letters that they've received from the club. And it's a standard letter that I think that they've just got ready printed format, and they just go print, and then it's just like, sign it. I don't think even the signature's real. It's a printed signature. Do you know what I mean? And this is where the difference. I understand that time moves faster now, but what does it take? Even if you could just hand sign the letter to show that there's a bit of reality to it. They don't. It's just print, piss off. I don't care. So
let's conclude things. FK, following this AGM, I'm going to ask both of you this question. Following this AGM, do you see a bright future for the club? Do you see maybe that one day we can be all as one in this club? Because there is a massive divide between that board and the fan base. And from what's gone on yesterday, I don't see things getting any better. But what do you think?
I'm anxious, and I'm anxious on a couple of points. I think obviously we're a big club and we're going in the right direction in terms of like our growth and what we want to achieve, the stadium and all that type of stuff. I'm anxious about two things: the ownership and how far they are removed from the fans. And I would advise them to look at the makeup of the board. I'm not saying get me as a fan on there. It could be anyone. It could be someone who's closer to the roots of the club. ex-players, legends like Bob Wilson. He's been in the game, he's played the game, he's presented in the game, he's respected in the game. Someone like that as part of the board.
Ian Wright,
just to
I'd like
educate.
to see
Yeah, I mean, why not?
You imagine Wrighty on the board in a meeting with Stan.
I'd love to see somebody
I know,
who speaks.
I'm not disagreeing.
Somebody who speaks from the heart. Somebody who's a bit different to to everybody that's on that board.
So there's that. There's that community. So if it's going to be the Kroenkes looking after Arsenal in the future, we need to work together. He needs to engage with the fans. He needs to do that because he's just far away. I know, but these are just my suggestions.
He's not engaging with anybody.
No, how long's Stan been here now?
How long 10 years now?
Yeah. Has he engaged with the fans?
No.
So why is he going to do it now? He isn't.
But this is precisely the point of my anxiety.
He isn't.
And the second thing, and I think the biggest challenge that we've got is obviously post Arsene Wenger. Who are they going to appoint? This is why I think having Gazidis on the board is a good thing, because of all the people on that board, he's the only one who comes across as he's got a clue about the club. He seems to, what he says resonates really strongly with me personally as a man who goes to games. And he says the right things, and people say he's a politician, but actually he is quite a competent chief exec. And so the onus is on him now to look at getting Arsene Wenger's replacement. And do we fall like United and maybe climb and have a few years of fluctuation? Do we hit the ground running and bring in someone who's got a long-term project? Do we get a big name? I mean, I want Simeone. I've always liked Simeone, but like DT, I know it's never going to happen because of the conflict of personalities. But do we go for like an Ancelotti to kind of maybe manage that transition? So the manager change is a big thing. In terms of the longer-term future, who knows, man? I mean, Rob, the money in football these days. After Sky, it's going to maybe be Netflix, Amazon, that Apple. It could change the landscape dramatically. So it's all about money, and I have absolutely no idea.
You never know. You might buy Arsenal. You might be buying Arsenal too.
Yeah,
know what I mean?
I'd rather
put me in charge. Yeah? Put me in charge. Yeah, manager.
Buy Netflix.
You know what I mean? Manager.
What would you? What's your view on it?
In the manager's side of things, I think the perfect replacement for Arsene when he steps down in a year, if he steps down. Oh God, that thought just absolutely makes me shiver. Would be Ancelotti. Big name, been there, seen it, done all them things. He could manage the club, and he has managed the Premier League. So I think that it wouldn't faze him. It wouldn't be, like a big weight on the shoulders. I felt for David Moyes to take over from, Sir Alex. It's always going to be hard, but I just feel that David Moyes was just nowhere near a big enough name to
these
do
guys running the club. You got any confidence in them that they can?
I would like.
They say they love it.
I would like to say what I would like to happen to them, but I would like to say it off camera because I don't want that on record. What I really think.
Leave it off camera, please.
Yeah, but I
want
think
this video to stay up.
But I actually think that I'd be hasten to say that there's more than 95% of fans that probably agree with that opinion as well.
I'd like to just add in closing that it's important, if we feel this way about Kroenke, it's really important that Usmanov doesn't sell up.
Yeah. Because he can't.
As much as we all want one single guy to just plough money in and own the club, if Kroenke gets full ownership, then he can.
But it wouldn't be AGM.
There wouldn't be an AGM.
That'd be the least of our concerns.
Mind you, is there any point in having an AGM?
No, I know, but then at least he wouldn't have to travel over.
At least he can't do whatever he wants, and that's the biggest fear. He could offset debt against the club. He could relocate the club like he's done with the LA Rams in America. He could do all. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and that's the biggest fear. So whilst we don't know much about Usmanov and his intentions, it's actually probably better for us that there are two distinct. Big sharks.
Yeah,
if you like.
And also we do have this Nigerian guy as well. That's
Kelechi.
Not Kelechi. Can you imagine him on the board? With his magic
that's
wand.
all. I'd love someone like Kelechi on the board.
Yeah.
That would be brilliant.
No,
that's what we need.
Wand, do you know what I mean? But
Trust me.
it's just like I said, Robbie. My thoughts on the board. My thoughts on the manager. That's not going to change. I said to you many a times, the only way my thoughts on Arsene Wenger will change will be if he went out there and won the Premier League and the Champions League. And I said because. How can you want a man that's done that out? Reality is FA Cup, it's a 7-game competition. You've got to have luck along the way. Even the 2 we won before last year, we got the luck of playing like Wigan in a semi-final and then Hull in a final. And then a year later, we got the luck of getting Reading in a semi-final.
Yeah, but
do you know what I mean? No, but that's what I'm saying. You got an awful Aston Villa side in the final. You've got to have luck in cup competition.
Yeah,
Come
but
on,
the
man.
best team.
But the best teams.
The last year they beat Man City and Chelsea to win it.
Yeah, that's fine. But what I'm saying is in there as well. We've got 2 Panorama teams. But what I'm saying is that you are defined over the course of a season. 38 games. There is no one better than you in England when you win that Premier League. And look at Man City right now. And look at Arsenal right now. How far apart are we? A million miles away.
Are we ever going to be able to compete with a team like that with the amount of money we're spending?
Well,
because the thing about it, right, is that when a team spends as much money as that, are you going to be able to compete with teams like that? Anybody, really?
I think you could.
Apart from, say, United.
Because we've got the basis of
and at the moment,
we've got the basis of a good side anyway. With just tweaks here and there. But the problem with us is that for many years now, I feel that we've always been 2 players short. And then we go and buy two, 3 players, but then we sell 2, 3 players.
But a team like City, I mean, it's probably for another show, but a team like City, their spending power, one of the things about their spending power is that they can just discard a player as well. So if they go and buy a player and he don't work and last season, they just say get rid of him and just bring in another one. That is where that spending power gives you that big advantage.
Reality is,
you know, if Arsenal go and buy Granit Xhaka, 35 million, he hasn't really done it yet.
Leave him alone.
Right? They have to. I know he's your best mate
biggest
now.
fan now,
There
right?
Now, wait there. Hold on.
I love you, Granit.
Hold on a minute.
Maybe
Let me explain something
Maybe
to you
you and
right
Jack
now.
Wilshere should play together.
Well, hold on a minute.
2 weeks ago.
Wait there.
I had to slip that in. 2 weeks ago, you lot
let me explain
Xhaka's got
something.
to go.
No. Really? Right, let me make something very, very clear.
Well, listen,
right?
no, we're going to cut that.
No, because I'm going to say this right clearly now, right? People need to actually open their eyes and see who you're interviewing. Because I'm the one who sticks up for Granit Xhaka.
Right, Granit.
I am not the one that has been asking. Right, wait there. Shut up, Robbie. Right, listen. Yeah? Troops is the one that said he was a waste of money. Troops is the one that said he should be dropped from the team. I'm the one that puts him in my previews every single week. I'm the one that sticks up for him every single week. Even last week, I tried blaming Mertesacker for the hospital ball we gave him that put him in trouble. So people that sit there and go, you slag him up. No, I don't. Someone even said about Giroud and said that I call him a lamppost. When did I look like Claude?
If you listen closely, I swear Troop says, I love you, Granit, right now. I love you,
Granit, Troops
right
goes, Granit, it should be you and Jack together. I was like,
yet 2 weeks ago, he was saying Granit should be dropped for Wilshere. So when people start making their comments about on that video, stop comparing me and Troops as one, because I don't say the same things as him.
I've heard you dissing Granit.
I've never dissed him.
I'm going to dig up some videos.
Go ahead. Go on then.
Listen, thanks for watching All Guns Blazing today. I really want to say a big thank you to FK for coming on. FK, brilliant that you came on. You gave us all the information on the AGM. You have been brilliant as well. We'd love to have you back on again soon. And also thanks to DT as usual.
FK survived over an hour with me.
Yeah. Do you know, I've got to say, right? Sometimes you hear noise from DT's account about how much he doesn't like Wenger or the board, but you know what? When you're in his presence, you really feel that hatred, man. It's properly. I will say to you, it's legit how much he dislikes Wenger. Like,
it's not fake, is it?
It's real. So as much as I disagree with him, and as much as he gets on my nerves sometimes, it's proper. It's from the heart. It's real.
There you go.
Listen, thanks for watching All Guns Blazing. Don't forget. Just go to the description below. You can get it on iTunes as well as being here on YouTube. And we'll be back next week here on All Guns Blazing with another subject. This has been a really good thing to talk about. It's what everyone's talking about at the moment. So once again, FK, thanks for coming on, and we'll be back next week.
There we go.